I was standing naked and shivering in my own bathroom at 2 in the morning while my husband blocked the doorway, screaming at me about a handprint on my body. A handprint. That was the thing that was about to burn down 10 years of my life. And the worst part, the part that still keeps me up at night, is that I was telling the truth about every single second of how it got there. He stood in that doorway with his arms braced against the frame like a man guarding a crime scene. And he looked at me. The woman he'd married, the woman whose house he lived in, whose bed he slept in, like I was a stranger who'd broken in. "Don't you dare walk away from me," he said, every time I tried to move past him. "You're not running from this." Running. I was cold, I was exhausted, I was standing there in nothing but goosebumps, and my own husband was treating my bathroom like an interrogation room. But to understand how we got there, I have to take you back. Back before the slap. Back before the night out. Back to who we were, or who I thought we were. My name doesn't matter, but for this story, what matters is this. I'm 35 years old, and I built my life with my own 2 hands. I bought my house at 29, a modest semi-detached at the edge of a quiet housing estate, the kind of place where you can hear a car, door shut 3 streets over. I saved for the deposit through years of packed lunches and second-hand furniture, and saying no to holidays my friends were taking. Every brick of that house was mine before he ever walked through the door. Every mortgage payment came out of my bank account. Every leaky pipe, every new boiler, every repainted room mine. I'm telling you this now because it matters later. It matters more than I ever imagined it would. Marcus was 30. We met when he was still at university. I was 25, he was 20, and he had that kind of easy charm that makes you forget to ask practical questions. He could talk to anyone. He could make a room laugh. When he graduated, he floated. That's the kindest word for it. A job here, a job there, nothing that ever stuck, nothing that ever paid more than minimum wage, and for the last 6 months before all of this, nothing at all. No job, no savings. I told myself it didn't matter, because I earn enough, and love isn't a ledger. I really believe that. I want you to remember that I believe that. Here's something else you need to know, because it became a weapon later. Marcus chose my outfits when I went out. That was my idea, not his. I saw it in a film when I was younger. A man picking out a dress for his wife, holding it up against her, telling her she'd be the most beautiful woman in the room, and something about it always seemed impossibly romantic to me. It made me feel wanted. I'd stand in front of the wardrobe, and he'd pull things out and hold them against me, and I'd get this little thrill knowing that whatever I wore that night, he'd chosen it because he loved how I looked in it. I'd spend the whole evening excited to come home and let him see me in it again. It was our thing, our private, tender little ritual. Keep that in your mind because of what he did with it afterwards. The night it all started was a Friday in March. My friend Priya was turning 36, and a group of us were going out, dinner, a couple of bars, nothing wild. I go out 3, maybe 4 times a year. That's it. Marcus went out every single weekend with his mates, and I never said a word, never asked who he was with, never waited up with a stopwatch. But my nights out were rare enough that they felt like events. I did my hair. I did my makeup properly, the way you only bother to when you know you'll be photographed. Marcus stood at the wardrobe that evening and pulled out the thinnest dress I own, a slip of a thing, soft fabric that moved like water, and handed me a thong to go under it. "This one," he said, and he smiled at me, and he kissed my shoulder as I stepped into it. "You look incredible." He chose it. He zipped it up. He waved me off at the door and told me to have a good night. I want to be absolutely clear about that, because 6 hours later that same man would look at me in that same dress like it was evidence. The night itself was lovely and completely ordinary. There were 6 of us. We had dinner, we laughed too loudly, we told the same old stories we always tell. I had 3 glasses of wine over 6 hours, 3 spread across an entire evening, which is to say I was barely even warm. I was the one reminding people to drink water. And then, early on, before I'd even finished my first glass, actually before I'd had a single sip, we were still walking between the restaurant and the first bar. The thing happened. The tiny, stupid 5-second thing. Let me tell you about Tessa first, because she's at the center of all this, and she deserves better than what came after. Tessa is the quietest person in our group. She's the one who apologizes when you step on her foot. She speaks in this soft voice you have to lean in to hear. She blushes when a waiter asks her order, and she has never once in 15 years of friendship been the center of attention on purpose. But Tessa is also 6 feet tall. She played netball at county level when we were younger. She has long arms, broad shoulders, and this becomes forensic later, so pay attention, genuinely big hands. Piano-spanning hands. Hands you notice when she waves. We were walking down the road through the estate, all of us in a loose line, laughing about something Priya had said, when my heel caught the lip of a drain cover. Not a graceful stumble. A full, cartoonish, arms windmilling trip that sent me down onto my hands and knees on the pavement. My knees hit hard enough to break the skin. The dress ripped slightly at the seam. And there I was on all fours in the middle of the path, laughing too hard to get up, my bum sticking up in the air in that thin, thin dress. And then I heard footsteps. Running footsteps. To this day, I don't fully understand what possessed her. Maybe it was the one drink she'd had. Maybe 15 years of being the quiet one built up some pressure that had to escape somewhere. But timid, gentle, wouldn't Sibuta Goose Tessa took a running start and slapped my backside with the full force of a county netball wing attack. The sound, I am not exaggerating, echoed off the houses. It was a thunderclap. Somewhere on that estate, someone's dog started barking. Both of us screamed. Me from the impact, her from the sting in her own palm. Because you know a slap has landed properly when both people are in agony. The whole group collapsed. Priya was crying with laughter against the garden wall. Chloe couldn't breathe. And Tessa, poor Tessa, stood there shaking her hand out, mortified at herself, apologizing through tears of laughter. One cheek was warmer than the other for the entire rest of the night. We joked about it at the bar. Somebody said they should have filmed it, and we all groaned that nobody had. And then, honestly, I forgot about it. It was a 5-second bit of slapstick on a lovely evening. We drank our drinks, we toasted Priya, we hugged goodbye around half midnight, and I got a taxi home with my ripped hem and my stinging knees and my heart full, thinking about the man waiting in my bed, thinking about the ritual, coming home in the dress he chose so he could see me in it one more time. The bedroom light was still on when I got in around 1. Marcus was awake, propped up in bed, phone in hand. And because our sex life had gone strange lately, we used to be nearly every day, and over the past few months it had dried to maybe once a week, and it was me raising it, me asking what was wrong. I decided to try. I stood at the foot of the bed, and I made a little show of it. A striptease for my own husband. I swayed. I let the straps down slowly. I let the dress drop, and as it fell I turned and stuck my bum out toward him, playful, right near him. And my husband screamed. Not gasped, not laughed, screamed at the top of his voice, "What the fuck is that?" And before I could even process the words, he was out of the bed and in my face, so fast and so aggressive that I stumbled backwards and fell onto the mattress. And he was standing over me screaming, "Who the fuck did that?" Here's the thing about being screamed at when you're mid-striptease at 1 in the morning. Your brain doesn't work. I stuttered. I genuinely, for 2 or 3 seconds, could not remember what he could possibly be talking about because the slap had been filed away hours ago under funny thing that happened. If he'd asked me normally, "Hey, what's that, Mark?" I'd have said, "Tessa slapped my bum. You should have heard it without missing a beat." Instead, I sat there half naked, blinking, going, What are you?" while he loomed over me. And that stutter, those 2 seconds of confusion, became his first piece of evidence. Guilty people hesitate, you see. It never occurred to him that terrified people do too. When it clicked, I almost laughed with relief. Oh my God, that's Tessa. I tripped over a drain cover, and she slapped my bum. It was the funniest thing, ask any of them, but he wasn't listening. His face had gone somewhere I'd never seen it go. He held out his hand, flat, cold. "Give me your phone." I gave it to him. I want that on the record. I handed my phone over without a second's hesitation, unlocked, everything open, because I had absolutely nothing to hide. He sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through my messages, my photos, my call log, my everything, while I sat there in a thong at 1 in the morning, waiting to be cleared of charges I didn't understand yet. He found nothing. Of course he found nothing. The most scandalous thing on my phone was a porn clip I'd saved in my favorites because, brace yourself, I'm a grown woman who likes sex. And do you know what he said when he found nothing? "You've deleted everything. You've covered your tracks. The absence of evidence became evidence. That was the moment I should have understood the shape of the next week. There was no possible finding that meant innocent. I went to the bathroom to look for myself, and there was in the mirror a handprint, a proper one, palm, fingers, the whole anatomy of a hand printed in red across my left cheek like a stamp. And I need to explain why it was still so vivid hours later, because he never let me finish this explanation once all week. I'm on blood thinners. Have been for years. He knew. He'd picked up my prescriptions. I mark if you look at me firmly. I bruise if a shopping trolley grazes me. Add to that, the dress was tissue thin, the thong covered nothing, I was on all fours so the skin was pulled tight, and Tessa hit me with a running start. Every single fact that made that print possible was a fact my husband already knew about my own body. He just decided none of them counted. He followed me into the bathroom. And that's where you came in. That's the scene I open with. Over half an hour, naked, freezing, arguing in circles while he filled the doorway. Every time I said I was cold, every time I reached for a towel or tried to step past him, he moved to block me and accused me of trying to run away from the conversation. There was no conversation. There was a cross-examination with one acceptable verdict. What would you have done in this situation, standing there while someone you've loved for 10 years calls you a liar to your face over and over? Let me know in the comments, because I've replayed that night 100 times, and I still don't know if there was a version where I said the magic words and he snapped out of it. His case, such as it was, had two pillars. Pillar 1, this doesn't sound like Tessa at all. Which fair, honestly. It didn't sound like her. That's what made it funny. Quiet people doing one wildly out-of-character thing is the entire basis of half the funny stories in human history. Pillar 2, and this is where he thought he had me. That handprint is too big to be a woman's. I stood there, dripping and shivering, explaining that Tessa is 6 feet tall with hands like dinner plates, that she played county netball, that he has met her at least 50 times and shaken that enormous hand at our wedding. He waved it away. In his head, some faceless man in some dark corner had gripped and slapped my body, and I had come home and performed a striptease for my husband with the evidence still glowing. That was the story he preferred. Sit with that. He preferred it. So at 2 a.m, I rang Tessa, woke her up, put her on speaker in my bathroom, and this shy, gentle woman, who was so embarrassed by what she'd done that she'd already texted me 2 apologies, confirmed every detail, half asleep and mortified. Then she said something that still makes me want to cry when I think about it. I'll get dressed and come round right now. I'll put my hand on the mark. It'll match. You'll see it's mine. A forensic demonstration offered at 2 a.m. by a woman who blushes ordering coffee. He said no, and then he unveiled his masterpiece. We had all made it up together. The whole friend group. We had conspired, coordinated our stories, and deliberately picked the tall friend as the designated culprit because she'd have the biggest, most plausible handprint. 6 women, apparently, ran a same-night criminal conspiracy to conceal that a strange man slapped me. A thing that, even if it had happened, wouldn't have been my crime. I tried the group chat. This is going to sound mad, but did anyone film me falling over? Nobody had. 6 people, in the age of everyone filming everything, and the one time I desperately needed surveillance of my own humiliation, nothing. It happened on a residential street, tripping over a drain cover. No bar cameras, no doorman, no CCTV to summon. All I had was my word, 5 witnesses he refused to hear, a ripped dress, 2 scabbed knees, and a handprint that was already starting to fade. And I learned something that weekend that I'll carry for the rest of my life. You cannot prove anything to a person who has decided that proof itself is part of the plot. The weekend was a slow-motion drowning. Saturday, he trailed me room to room, restarting it. Not asking, restarting from the top, like a detective hoping the 10th retelling would shake loose a contradiction. Where exactly did you fall? Why were you on your knees? Why can't you remember instantly? Why did you stutter? I answered everything, every time, word for word the same, because the truth doesn't need rehearsing. And I watched him take my consistency and file it as more evidence. Too consistent. Rehearsed. When the story wobbled by a single word, that was evidence too. Heads he wins, tails I'm a cheat. Sunday morning, and 4 o'clock on Sunday morning, I surfaced out of sleep because someone was saying my name in the dark. He was sitting up, wide awake, staring at me. And he asked me again. 4 a.m. By 4:45, I was sitting on the edge of my own bed, exhausted beyond tears, while he paced and lectured, and I remember looking at the clock and thinking, with a strange calm, this is not a misunderstanding anymore. This is something he is doing to me. The handprint had completely faded off my skin by then. It was gone from my body. It was never going to be gone from him. Monday, I went to work on 3 hours of sleep and sat in my car in the car park before going in, just breathing. That's where I was when Jasmine rang to check on me. And when I laid it all out, the screaming, the phone search, the 4 a.m. wakings, the conspiracy theory, she went quiet for a moment and then said the sentence that reframed everything. Babe, people who trust their partners don't invent conspiracies. People accuse you of what they're doing. Projection. I turned the word over all day. 10 years, and he'd never once accused me of anything. This was genuinely the first time, and I'd never given him a single reason. I've never so much as looked at another man. So why now? Why this? Why did a comedy handprint from a female friend instantly become a strange man's hand in his head? What was already in his head, waiting for something to project onto? That evening I said it to his face. Calmly, I think you're projecting. I think you should ask yourself why your mind went straight there. He detonated. How dare I? Deflection, turning around on him. The guilty always go on the attack. And I noticed, from somewhere quiet and increasingly far away inside myself, that he described exactly what he'd been doing to me for 4 straight days. Then it got worse, because it always gets worse. Tessa offered again, in writing this time, to come round, hand out, ready to be fingerprint matched like this was a police procedural. He refused. I begged him, talk to Priya, talk to Chloe, talk to any of them, separately, cross-examine them, catch us in a lie if there's a lie to catch. He refused. And that refusal told me everything, because a man who truly believed his wife had been slapped by a strange man would want the truth. He'd be tearing the town apart for it. Marcus wanted the accusation. The accusation was doing something for him that the truth couldn't. I showed him the physical evidence like a barrister on closing. The dress, ripped at the seam from the fall. The dress he chose. My knees both scabbed from the pavement. Explain that, I said. And my husband looked at my injured knees and said the vilest thing anyone has ever said to me. He said the scabs were from me giving head. On my knees. For someone else. I actually laughed. One ugly, shocked bark of a laugh, because before the horror hit, the logistics did. How aggressively does he imagine I dropped? Onto what gravel? Through what sheer force of enthusiasm? But when the laugh died, what remained was this. My husband had looked at wounds from a fall his own friends watched happen, and chosen the interpretation that degraded me most. So I played my last card. Fine, your turn. Give me your phone. You could have heard a pin drop. This man had strip-searched my digital life in front of me, and when I asked for one look at his, he pulled it to his chest and said, no, I'm not the one on trial here. I'm not the one on trial. I stood there, and something clicked into place with an almost audible sound. I don't care about porn. I wouldn't have cared about some subscription site, but a man with nothing to hide, who had demanded total transparency from me, hands the phone over just to hold the moral high ground. He wouldn't. And my mind went back over the last few months, the sex drying up from daily to weekly, me being the one asking what was wrong, him going out every single weekend while I stayed home. And Jasmine's word rang like a bell. Projection. That week he woke me up 3 separate times in the night to berate me. I want to describe just one, because he woke me up sounds so mild. It's not mild. It's 3:30. You're finally asleep after days of this. And you're dragged into consciousness by a voice already mid-accusation, and your heart is slamming before your eyes are open, because the body learns fear faster than the mind does. You lie there while a person leans over you in the dark, demanding you confess. Sleep deprivation is what interrogators use, and it works. By Thursday, I flinched when he walked into a room. In my own house. The house I bought. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button. We post new stories every day, because what happened next is the part one still can't tell without my hand shaking. Friday, I came home from work and smelled smoke. Followed it through the kitchen to the back garden. and there was Marcus standing over the old metal incinerator bin, feeding my clothes into a fire. My going-out clothes. All of them. The dresses he had chosen for me, one by one, over years of that sweet little ritual I told you about. The ritual that was my idea, my romance, my thing, curling and blackening in the flames. He'd gone through my wardrobe while I was at work and selected everything I might ever wear on a night out, and he was burning it. He didn't even look guilty when he saw me. He looked satisfied, like he was performing a cleansing. The thin dress from Priya's birthday went in while I stood there, and I watched the fabric catch, and I understood that in his story, the clothes were the crime. Not his screaming, not the 4 a.m. interrogations. The clothes he picked out with his own hands. I wish I could tell you the fire was the worst thing that week. It wasn't, because when I screamed at him, and I did scream, finally, standing in my garden watching years of my life go up in smoke, he turned around and said, with a calm that frightened me more than any shouting ever had, that if I kept playing the victim, he would post my photos and videos online. Private ones. He'd show everyone, he said, exactly what kind of woman I really am. He used a much uglier word than woman. And there it was. The mask didn't slip. It came off entirely, and it turned out there had been a stranger wearing my husband's face for who knows how long. A man threatening revenge porn against his own wife over a handprint from her friend. He put his hands on me twice that week, grabbed me hard by the arms, wrenching me back around while I tried to leave a room. The same move as the bathroom doorway, but with contact now because these things always escalate. That's the whole terrible pattern of them. And once, when I refused to stand and listen to the sermon again, he shoved me down onto the sofa. Not a push and a scuffle. A shove downward to put me where he wanted me, beneath him, looking up. I sat there on that sofa looking up at this unemployed man in the house I paid for. This man who hadn't worked in 6 months, who had never contributed a pound to the mortgage or a single repair, screaming down at me about my honor. And whatever had still been alive in me, the part still hoping he'd wake up Saturday and be Marcus again and be so sorry, that part quietly died right there on my own cushions. The next morning I told him it was over. I said it flat. No tears left. I want a divorce. Get out of my house. And do you know what he did? This man who had spent a week burning clothes and staging dawn tribunals, supposedly out of uncontainable love and betrayal? He shrugged. He barely reacted. 10 years together, for married, and the end of it landed on him like a canceled dinner reservation. All that operatic jealousy and the actual loss of me registered as nothing. I think that non-reaction told the truth about the whole week better than anything else. It was never about losing me. It was about controlling me, punishing me, or if Jasmine was right, and I think she was manufacturing a story where I was the guilty one, so whatever he was doing in his own locked phone became justified. There's a theory I can't prove and can't shake, that a man who dresses his wife in her most provocative outfit, sends her out, then explodes into accusations at the first ambiguous mark, might be building himself an exit. She cheated first to show whoever he was really texting. I'll never know. He made sure I'll never know. That Sunday was Mother's Day. March, because not everywhere runs on the American calendar. And I saw my brother Liam. I sat in our mom's kitchen and told him all of it. The screaming, the wakings, the fire, the threat about the photos, the grabbing, and the sofa. I watched my little brother's jaw tighten notch by notch, and when I finished he was quiet for a long moment, and then he said he put his hands on you, not as a question, and stood up and put the kettle on with a very particular calm. Liam went to see Marcus later that week. He took Marcus's own brothers with him, which I found genuinely poetic. Even Marcus's family, once they heard about the fire and the threats, weren't on Marcus's side. I wasn't there. I don't know exactly what was said. I know that nobody was hurt, and I know that I have not heard one single word from my husband since. Not a text, not a voicemail. Total, absolute silence. Draw your own conclusions about how deep his convictions ran once the audience changed. The silence should have felt like peace, but a man who threatens revenge porn doesn't get the benefit of the doubt ever again. So I turned my house into a fortress. New locks, every door, the same week. Security cameras covering every approach and new floodlights all around. Indoor cameras too, sold as pet cams, pointed at every room that matters. I screwed my letterbox shut and put a post box outside at the end of the drive because I'd read about bitter exes pouring things through letterboxes and I couldn't unread it. I even started swapping my company car every couple of days in case he'd hit a tracker. Is that paranoid? Probably. Almost certainly. But paranoia is just pattern recognition with a nervous system attached. And my nervous system had spent a week learning exactly what this man does when he feels wronged. I'd rather be embarrassed about the postbox than wrong about him once. And then, I'll own this, I did one gloriously petty thing. Once the locks were changed and the paperwork was moving, I got the girls round and I recreated the scene. Me on all fours on the pavement, laughing exactly like that night, and Tessa beside me with her enormous hand planted flat on my bum, both of us grinning into the camera. I posted it publicly with no caption. A photographic reconstruction of the crime, starring the actual culprit hand to scene of impact for the benefit of anyone still confused about what happened. Tessa, who spent weeks feeling sick that her one moment of chaos had detonated my marriage, laughed so hard she had to sit down on the curb. That photo did more for her guilt than 100 reassurances, and it did something for me too. It took the thing he'd turned into a horror story and gave it back to us as the joke it always was. Drop a comment below. Do you think they made the right call? Do you think I made the right call, ending a 10-year relationship over 1 week of showing me who he was? Because I've had strangers line up on both sides of that question. Oh, and people did line up. Once the story traveled around our wider circle, the messages came, and not just aimed at him. A depressing number came for me. Men informing me that a married woman of 35 has no business being out at that hour, that I was for the streets, while my husband went out every single weekend of our marriage, and I went out 3 times a year. Women, too, which stung more, telling me a striptease for my own husband was degrading. Degrading. Trying to seduce the man I married in our bedroom because I wanted him. I need everyone to hear this clearly. Women enjoy sex too, and wanting your own husband is not a scandal. The double standard I got buried under for one handprint taught me more about why women stay silent than anything else in this whole mess. As for the divorce, this is where every choice 29-year-old me made pays off. The house predates him. Bought before we met, deed in my name, every mortgage payment from my account, every repair from my pocket, and him with 6 months of unemployment and not a penny of savings. Here, that history matters. He walked out of a decade with what he brought into it, which was charm and a phone he wouldn't unlock. Some people hear that and call me cold. I call it the natural consequence of setting fire to your wife's belongings in her own garden. Next week, I fly to Krakow, a trip I'd already booked before any of this, and I intend to sit in a beautiful old square with a glass of wine at whatever hour I please, wearing whatever I please, answering to no one. Here's what I keep coming back to, now that the locks are changed and the house is quiet. He said the handprint didn't sound like Tessa, and he was right. It didn't, and it was still true. But you know what didn't sound like Marcus? All of it. The screaming, the fire, the threats, the shove. 10 years, and I'd have sworn on my life he wasn't capable of any of it. So maybe the real lesson is this. Trust isn't proven by the years when nothing tests it. Trust is what happens in the first 5 minutes of the one moment that does. I passed his test without even knowing I was taking one. I came home, told the truth, handed over my phone, offered witnesses. He failed mine in a single scream. A handprint fades in a day. What a person shows you when they think they've caught you. That never fades at all. Hey, we're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers on this channel, and your support is the only reason we are anywhere close. If you're not subscribed, please tap that button. Thanks for making this dream come true.